Hey guys, welcome back to the garage. I'm out here shooting a bonus episode of Used Motorcycle Rehab about everybody's favorite topic, coolant leaks. Let's take a look at this. If, unlike me, you've been riding your SV650 more than you've been working on it, you may encounter a situation like this where, if you look here, you've got all this residue that looks like it's coming out of this seam in the crankcases, or from maybe this joint here where the cylinder head joins to the cylinder block, or maybe on the other side. Or you may find that you've got coolant coming out of this area here. You can see some evidence of it on my bike here with these streaks that initially I thought were oil, but I think that in fact they're coolant. Or you may find that you've got coolant residue in this area here. I did some Googling about this issue after I noticed that I had a coolant leak in that area that I showed you there. Basically, it looked like the coolant was coming from in the V between the two cylinders. Most of the threads that I found had people pretty concerned that the coolant was coming out from where the head meets the cylinder block, and they were worried that they had a head gasket problem. I can almost assure you that that is not the case. And I'm about to show you the 2 or 3 areas that if you're having this problem, you should look at these first, and chances are that's what the problem is. And it's not, in fact, any sort of head gasket problem. So let's take a look at that here. First thing to check are these hose clamps at the big radiator hoses between the water pump and the radiator. These two here, this one and that one, and the corresponding two on the other side. When I replaced the radiator, I made a video about that, I found that I didn't get these tight enough initially, and you have to get them pretty tight in order to get them to seal. So if you're having coolant leaking down in this area, it's going to look like it's coming out from under the water pump, and you're going to freak out and think that you have to replace this mechanical seal, which that would be a pain in the neck. But before you do that, give this coolant hose clamp a couple of quarter turns and see if that doesn't fix your problem. And chances are it probably will. Water pumps are pretty robust. Now, if that doesn't work and you've still got coolant coming out from inside here, it looks like it's coming out from the gap between the crotch of the V-twin, we'll call it. Let me just show you what my actual problem was, and once you see it, you'll understand why this is a simple thing, but it's kind of a pain in the neck to fix. What we're looking at here is the coolant overflow bottle. This nipple connects to the radiator via a hose that snakes down under here, and this other nipple on this side connects to a hose that snakes somewhere down behind the engine so that if the coolant overflows the radiator and the bottle, it doesn't dribble out all over the engine. What I'd like to draw your attention to is this wetness right here. Now, this bottle has a seam that you can see along in here, and at first, when I went to look at this, I thought that was a crack, but it's not. If your bike will definitely have that seam right there, and that's not a crack. However, if we look at this very carefully, this is the one that just came off of my bike. You can see there are cracks all in here. There and there and there. I've never seen one of these plastic coolant bottles crack, except as the result of a crash. But this one, interestingly, is mounted in between the frame and the engine, such that crushing this would require the engine to move quite a bit inside the frame, and you'd have some deformation that would be very obvious, and this bike doesn't have that. So I'm perplexed as to how this happens, except purely as a function of heat cycles and age. So, if you're getting coolant leaking from the crotch of your V-twin on one of these SV650s, or if you have an SV1000, it's probably similar. First, check your hose clamps, and second, check the condition of this coolant bottle. And chances are, if you have one of these first-gen SV650s, you'll find you have some cracking somewhere in here, and that's where your coolant is leaking out from. It took me 45 minutes of sitting around with the engine idling in my garage, poking around looking for this before I figured this out. So hopefully this will save some of you some time. Also, I should point out how we go about replacing this. So as you can see, I've already removed this, and this is the old one, and this is a new one I got from eBay that if we look here, does not appear to have any cracking. It doesn't look like it's quite as clean on the inside, but it also doesn't appear to be cracked. It took me way longer than I would have expected to get you a nice stable shot of our work area, but there you can see. So we've got our carburetors here, and our coolant bottle mounts right here, and up here is the steering stem. So you're sitting on top of the handlebars there. This is a relatively simple job. All you have to do is pull the old reservoir out and put the new one in. However, getting to the 2 bolts that hold it in, and you can see it has 1 bolt hole here and another here, is easier said than done. So we put our hose back on this, and I think it's easier to put the hose on there now. And if you're not a sissy, you can sometimes do these by hand. But I am a sissy, so I'm going to use pliers for this. So there's our hose clamp, and then we stick this guy down in here, like that. All right, and there it's kind of in where it goes. So we got 2 10mm fasteners that hold this in. There's one down here, and then there's another one up here that by the radiator. Unfortunately, I tried for 15 minutes to get a good camera angle on this, and maybe... Hang on a second, I've got an idea. All right, hopefully our GoPro in there can focus on something this close to it. But we get our first bolt. No, that's not it. Okay, hang on. Getting the bolt started is tricky. And once you get it started, there we go. Okay, so we got that one started. Okay, you can see in there how this is supposed to go and why it's such a pain in the neck to get that in there. Don't want to lose our bolt. Unfortunately, holding the camera and doing this at the same time may be difficult or impossible. Let's see, can I wedge this in here like that? There you go. Anyway, you can see where the bolt goes, and you're going to have to take my word for it that I get it in there. And I'm going to get it in there somehow, but the camera's in the way, so I got to move it. All right. Well, I finally shouted enough profanity at this bolt that goes up here to get it into the hole. So that one is started, and this bottom one is started, and now I need to tighten them. Getting them out was a pain in the neck, and I have a feeling that tightening them is going to be just as much of a pain in the neck. So I've brought my secret weapon, many socket extensions. This bottom one, I'm hoping I can get the socket on from the other side and simply stick this train of extensions through the frame in the crotch of the V. And be able to get this on there that way. May have gone a little too far with the sockets. So we're going to remove our U-joint here and just use socket extensions, but these are the swivelly extensions. Yes! There we go. The other one may be more of a challenge because I don't think this solution is going to work there. Actually, the way that I got that out was with one extension and the U-joints. Maybe we can get it back in the same way. So for this one, well, I had it on there. All right, there we go. That bolts in. All right, guys, if you've been following the channel, chances are you can take it from here. The rest of the reassembly process is basically the reverse of removal. I've always wanted to say that. Anyway, bottom line, if you see coolant coming out of the crotch of your V, that's a bad sign. But check the hose clamps, check the condition of the coolant reservoir. Remember that there are additional hoses in between the V where they come out of the cylinder head into the thermostat housing, and then there's one that comes out of that assembly up to the radiator. Check for tightness of those as well, although chances are those are fine because they haven't been touched, but nevertheless, check them anyway. And with that, I will see you in the next one.